Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Doyle. This is the Virtual Table where I've been diving into Dungeon 23 and sharing my efforts. And on TikTok, a couple of people were asking me, hey, what is that program that you're using? And on our Discord server, most of you guys know that I'm using Dungeon Scrawl, but we started talking about like, how do you do this? How do you do that? So I figured I would sit down and maybe a little roughly off the cuff, make a tutorial very basic of how do you use Dungeon Scrawl. And you're going to find it's actually pretty easy. So let's dive on in. All right, so this is Dungeon Scrawl, old school dungeon maps made easy by Problem Train. If you can support the fine folks making this program, please do. If you plan to release your work, you are going to have to support them and purchase the commercial license, which also unlocks some additional features, but I'm not signing in. I am using the free version for this tutorial demonstration so that you're not going to see anything here that you don't instantly have access to for the low, low price of nothing, which is awesome. I can't stress enough. We really take for granted how many beautiful, powerful tools we have at our fingertips in our modern age with all of its problems. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, like Dungeon Scrawl. So let's start scrolling. All right, so right out of the gate, we're getting the update notes. This is version 2, version 2.25, version 2.25. I was giving folks advice on the Discord from that applied to the old version of this software, which you can still access if you so choose. The isometric, I think, is still in version 1. I love the look of it. I go crazy trying to get my brain to draw in isometric, whatever. The current version as of right now is what we are looking at, and they're giving us a few useful shortcuts right out of the gate. How to pan and zoom, control your table, your area, and then undo, which is going to be my favorite tool in this kit, and redo if I want to undo my undo. So I am not an expert cartographer, 1, or dungeon scrawler, 2. I learned this not by taking a class or by reading all the documentation. I messed around and found out, right? And usually F around and found out is going to be a reference to getting beat up or something, but no one's going to hurt you. The stakes are very low here. I encourage you to just open this up and mess around and see what you get. That's how I did it, and I screwed a lot of things up, and in the process, learned how to convey maps and build battle maps that I can go export onto a virtual tabletop very quickly. I'm going to show you that towards the end of this demonstration. But enough talk, let's actually demonstrate in this demonstration. We are defaulted to the rectangle tool right away. I can draw a room, right? And it's counting the boxes for me. So often, even knowing that this is counting for me, in the swamp dungeon that I made just recently, I was counting boxes while I was ticking it off. But I don't have to go, all right, 10, 11, 12. It's doing that work for me. So if I want a 10 by 10, right, room, I can make a 10 by 10 room without counting anything. And you might notice that it's giving me half steps. And I'm going to turn that off. That's the first hack I'm going to show you, that I'm going to show you. So here's a 10 by 10 room. And if I don't turn those half steps off, what can happen is I can end up with these little half squares. And this might be just the thing, depending on what you're doing. You might want to create a border on the side of the room to indicate something, a trap, or like the safe place that isn't the trap, or to create a place to put objects, artifacts, whatever the case may be. There's reasons why you may want these half steps, and they're fairly easy to get rid of. I can actually erase with most of these tools. I can come back in here and erase this line. Boop. But I can also go to division and make it 1 over 1. And now my little tool here is red because I'm still in erase mode, but my little tool here is 1 by 1. And erase is cool because look, I'm putting in columns right away. Bam. And they got these nice little drop shadows out of the gate. I can mess with that, but that's for later. The other thing we can do is turn the snap on and off. So maybe I want that column to be in the middle of the room, but coming across 2 squares, right? And now I'm back to making half squares. Boop. But there's that. That also gives me the opportunity to make things that aren't perfect to the grid. You know, even though I'm set to, whoops, I'm set 1 to 1. And I told you, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, my favorite part of this. I'm going to leave snap on for now. And I'm going to show you rough. Typically when I'm using this option, because rough, a lot of these are going to show up on the other tools, which we'll get to. Let's turn draw back on. Oftentimes when I'm going for a rough shape, I'm also not going for a square or a polygon, let's say. But there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. It's your world, baby. It's your map. Do what you like. But here's a 6x6 square, but instead of just dropping a square, I'm in limbo right now, and I have this little line that's toggling how rough that shape is. And you can see it's squiggling more and more as I tug on this thing. And then by clicking, I get a roughly square shape that has rough walls. So maybe this is more of a natural formation, or maybe this was, you know, dug by chaotic evil goblins, right, to connect to this troll symmetrical squared off forge. It's actually asymmetrical because I left a little. You know what? So I'm going to put the snap back on. I'm going to turn the roughness off, and I'm going to show you the next polygon tool. And this is not just I should have said a quadrilateral before. This is a rectangle tool, I believe they call it, right? Rectangle tool. This is our polygon tool. And same thing, I got erase, I got snap, I got the division, I've got roughness, and now I've got sides. So if I wanted to make an 8-sided shape, right? I'm playing with the Schools of Magic, or the Bagua, if you know your Eastern what Taoism. Boop. Oh, my boy's still on a race. My boy's still on a race. There we go. And now I'm drawing out from the center. Keep that in mind. You know, sometimes I want this to pull from the edge down, but I'm essentially making a circle, more or less. And I'm going to show you that in a second too. But let's say that the goblins here have managed to break through into this beautiful symmetrical dwarven shape. And what's more beautiful, my friends, than a perfect circle? Is it Michelangelo? There's some story somewhere where it's probably Pythagorean, right? It's probably some ancient Greek guy. Someone was asked to demonstrate their artistic skill, and they answered the challenge by just drawing a perfect circle. I can barely write my name, which is why I am using this. I know how to spell my name, but I can barely get my hands to convey what my brain wants you to see without some technological assistance here. So the next tool, which I use quite a bit, is going to be the path. Let's turn snap on for our dwarfs, and I can adjust the radius. Right now I'm looking at 10 by 10, basically, right? 2 by 2, 10 foot by 10 foot. I can change that radius, and I have little shortcuts here that I can use, but I'm going to turn this down to, let's say 16 is my square. Oh, and interestingly, it wants to grab the vertice, so I'm going to turn this back down so I can hit this half point, half. And now look at that, I'm drawing a hallway. Now I'm going to show you if I didn't connect those two, it would give me something like that. If I were to skip ahead a little bit and draw a door here, there you go. Here's a door, and I can change the fill of this door. You know, hey, I want this to be, this is the red door. What lies behind the red door? Do it. Boom. And you can go crazy with this. You can do double doors. Ba-dum. Ba-dum. You can do massive doors. To-do. Easy. Let's go back to path for a second because I am jumping ahead. I can turn on roughness, and I can turn off snap. And obviously you don't have to do both at once. And I can create kind of like free-drawn path here. These goblins were looking for that circle room, and they're not the brightest, so they took the long way. And I got rough turned on. Shabam. There you go. Now we're talking. Now we're getting weird. All right, what else do we have to show you today? A Polygon tool that connects, and this makes me think of like the old school Microsoft Art or Mario Paint. Man, do you remember Mario Paint? There was a mini game in Mario Paint with the fly swatter. Was that Mario Paint? That was Mario. Was that Mario Music? I'm going back. Remember when Super Nintendo had a mouse? I could use a mouse right now. Do I have rough on? I do. Doop. Bam. So, kind of what you would expect. We can also draw some walls. So if I wanted to make, I don't know, a maze, say, I could do that with this. And I could make it a little rough. Because goblins made this little, whatever, hidey hole. We can select things, and this one's going to grab. Shoot. Actually, let's undo that. Let's grab this little weird goblin room. And now it's selected. Now I can copy and paste this thing, right? Which is cool if I'm trying to be real fast, especially if I'm dragging and dropping squares, but even weird sized rooms. And let's say I don't want this to be perfectly symmetrical. I want to pretend that this is something entirely different, right? So I can spin it. Boom. Drop it right there. Bam. And now this isn't a demonstration on how to make a good map. It is just a demonstration on how to make a map using Dungeon Scrawl. And the last thing, we did the doors. The last thing I'm going to show you is stairs. So let's say they were looking for this circular room because that's where the stairs are to the lower level. So we're going to draw our base step, or our top step in this case, or maybe our bottom step, depending on how you think about it. And real simple, as I drag this out, it's given me steps. And now I like my stairs to kind of look like this. That feels long. Let's do 10 feet. I like my steps to look like that, more or less. That feels like stairs to me, but we can make all sorts of adjustments here. I can turn on the snap. I can make it onesies. And let's say I want it like denser, I suppose. You know, here's another version of a staircase, and maybe that looks like a ladder to me, but there you go. And then the last thing we have is the text tool. So obviously I want to come in here and number my rooms, right? And I can turn this way up. Boop. But I can use this to create anything, right? So I can I find it easier to type over here than on the thing. Let's make this a big text square because we're going to get creative. Open up, baby. All right, let's say this is room 1, which is the entrance. The room, capital letters, with the red doors. And I can change the font and make it feel more weird. I just grabbed one. That feels like a dwarf wrote it a little bit. I can, change the size of the font. I can grab this box and move it. Oh, I can also spin it. Not that I would want to. Give me you. Let's make it like this. And there we are. And it's in the shadows. So maybe you know what? This is the entrance now. This is the entrance now. This is the entrance now. But no, it's the room with the red doors. It's got to be this one. See, simple, easy, change your mind, edit, cool. Now, there are different ways to, all right, let me show you how to pan, actually. Not that most of you are going to need a demonstration. I can also click with spacebar to pan. And the one nice thing about my trackpad is I can pinch and zoom. Get out of pan mode. All right, so there's our stupid top of our head map. The style of the map is super easy to change. We started with the default, but if I wanted to go with this old school, TSR, please don't photocopy this successfully style, or something more like this fella, which is a little more basic to my mind. You get rid of that like hatching, or this is hatching with like a more grayscale opposed to this default parchment. I'm partial to this for more subterranean cave, caverny type of feels. And occasionally this is just the thing. And again, we can really customize. I'm not really messing around too much with this side of things, but this is where you can really dial in our colors, right? Let's say you built your brand on an obscure color, right? And you want things to be a little more verdigris. Cool. Easy. You can change the background to that tone. You can change the floor color to that tone. You can go and change the shading and the shadows to fit that color scheme. There's plenty you can do, and again, always undo. Boop. So let's go back to the parchment, and I'm going to show you. Well, let's apply this first. Let's get back to where we were. And much like Photoshop, there are layers here. So let's say I want to build the next floor. I got stairs going down or up. I'm going to add a new layer, dungeon layer 2, and again, back to basics. Let's draw a room. Bam. And now that's just on top of it. If I wanted it below, I can just drag and drop this layer. Now it's below. And I can turn off the visibility. And you can see objects are their own unique layer. But that's actually useful to see, okay, this is where the stairs are. I'm going to draw stairs on this one now to match. And now when I do this, there you go. There are the stairs. We can also, which I find super useful as, again, I started this conversation because I'm making a mega dungeon and there's going to be, in theory, 12 levels to it. I can come in here and grab the opacity. And do something like that. And this is useful for all sorts of things, but I want to convey that there's a level going underneath, but it's the same level. It's not its own unique floor. I can put in a new layer and do something like that. All sorts of things. Again, I am not the expert here. I'm just showing you the tools that you have available to you that you can run with and teach me a few things. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about for this demonstration is our images available. Boom. Bunch of different resources, bunch of different licensing. Again, if you're thinking about a commercial project, look at these Creative Commons licenses carefully. If you're just doing this for your home brew, for your table, for your game, for your friends, let's put some crystals in here, baby. Let's put some crystals in this cave. No, it's got to be in the cave, right? It's in the cavern. That's why we drew this thing in the first place. Here are crystals. They're a bit bigger. Yeah. Giant crystals. And I don't know. Numbers. Here's a rock pile obscuring the entrance to that crystal cavern. Secrets, armor, all sorts of stuff. All sorts of dungeon furnishings and a bunch of different styles, as you can see. Season to taste. If we're making a nobleman's house, we're doing some exteriors. We want a corner bookcase or a cart or a campfire. I always like a nice campfire. Boop. So there you have it. That is Dungeon Scrawl. And now maybe the most important thing is to tell you that this does not save in your browser. You're going to have to save this file locally. If you close this and come back to it tomorrow, it's all gone. So we can save this as a file that we can then open with this same thing in our browser to revisit this map. We can also export this as a PDF, which will give you essentially like a printable version. I don't do that too much, but a bunch of pages that you can lay out on the table and, you know, use your minis on. Or we could do a PNG file if we're trying to export this to use in Owlbear Rodeo, for instance, and then boom, very simple. It saves the file, you upload it. When you go to save the file, it saves it as whatever it's called, map, and then the number of cells it is, so that most of the programs are actually going to read that and know right away, but you can adjust the variables. This is 39 by 36, and hey, that's wrong for my friend's screen or whatever. I can come in and adjust that frame. Basically, I don't want all this empty space. Or I want to create a tremendous amount of empty space because I don't want my players to know exactly how big this area is. And it's telling me how many cells this is going to be when I export it. Cool. So I hope that was super helpful, useful, Dungeon 23 or otherwise. Maybe one day we'll do a much more elaborate version of this. Again, I want you to get in there and get messy, be kind to yourself, be patient with the program and yourself, and have fun with it. And then come join us on Discord and show me what you got. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I will see you next time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next more polished content coming from the Vergery table. Thanks again. Bye.